My name is Bart, and at 32, I thought I had my life figured out as a software developer in Seattle. Then came that frantic call from my dad about a family emergency back in Chicago. I dropped everything and flew across the country within hours, only to discover the truth. There was no emergency. My sister was vacationing in Cancun, and I was the designated babysitter they had tricked into service. What they never expected was how I would turn their deception into a lesson none of them would ever forget. Let me know where you all are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button, while I share how I transformed this betrayal into something beautiful. I had spent the last 6 years building my life in Seattle, far away from my family in Chicago. My apartment overlooking Lake Union had become my sanctuary, a place where I could be entirely myself without the weight of family expectations pressing down on me. The panoramic view of water and city skyline reminded me daily that I had made the right choice to leave home. At Horizon Technologies, I had worked my way up from junior developer to project lead, managing a team of 5 talented coders on our latest cloud security platform. My boss, Terry, had already hinted that the success of this project could mean a promotion to senior management by the end of the quarter. I had put in countless late nights and weekends to ensure everything was proceeding according to schedule. My friends in Seattle had become my chosen family. Every Thursday night, we gathered at Jordan's apartment for board games and takeout. Sundays were reserved for hiking the nearby mountains when weather permitted, or museum hopping during Seattle's frequent rainy days. Marie, Logan, and Darren knew more about my daily life than my biological family ever did. I had left Chicago for good reasons. Growing up, I was always the responsible one, the brother who covered for my sister Stephanie when she broke curfew, the son who mediated arguments between my divorced parents, the uncle who showed up whenever childcare fell through. Moving to Seattle had been my declaration of independence, a statement that I deserved to pursue my own dreams without being the family safety net. My relationship with my family remained respectful but distant. I called my father James every other week for brief conversations about sports and weather. My stepmother Susan would occasionally take the phone to ask perfunctory questions about my health and love life. I exchanged birthday and Christmas cards with my sister Stephanie and sent gifts to my nephews Jackson and Adam, and my niece Lily, though I had only met the youngest in person once. 2 years had passed since my last visit home. I had cited work commitments to avoid the last family reunion, sending a thoughtful gift basket instead. In truth, I had been protecting the boundaries I had so carefully constructed. Each visit home seemed to reset expectations that I would naturally fall back into my role as the family problem solver. The week everything changed had started normally enough. I was deep into coding a critical authentication module for our platform, my desk covered with energy drink cans and half-eaten protein bars. The first 3 calls from my father went straight to voicemail, as I focused on debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code. When my phone vibrated for the 4th time in 2 hours, I silenced it without looking. It was only during my lunch break that I checked my messages. 3 missed calls from Dad and 1 voicemail. His voice sounded uncharacteristically strained. "Bart, I need you to call me back immediately. It is an emergency. Your sister might need to go to the hospital. We need you here. Please call as soon as you get this." My stomach dropped. Despite our distant relationship, they were still my family. I called my father back immediately, my half-eaten sandwich forgotten on my desk. "Dad, what's happening? Is Stephanie okay?" His voice came through breathless with worry. "Bart, thank God you called back. Things are really serious here. I can't go into all the details over the phone, but we need you to come home. Your sister might need to go into the hospital for a procedure. The kids are completely overwhelmed. We don't know what else to do." "What kind of procedure? Is it life-threatening?" I asked, already pulling up flight searches on my computer. "The doctors are still running tests," he said vaguely. "But she's not doing well, son. She's asking for you. You know she wouldn't do that unless it was serious." That part was true. Stephanie and I had grown apart over the years, our different life choices creating a gulf between us. She had married young to her high school sweetheart Thomas, promptly had 3 kids, and settled into suburban life just 10 minutes from our father's house. If she was asking for me specifically, something must be terribly wrong. "I'll be there as soon as I can," I promised, already mentally calculating what I would need to rearrange. "Just text me updates if anything changes." After hanging up, I immediately went to Terry's office to request emergency family leave. Her concerned expression and immediate approval only heightened my anxiety. "Family comes first, Bart. We'll manage here. Just keep me posted." 4 hours later, I had booked an exorbitantly priced last-minute flight to Chicago, packed a week's worth of clothes in a carry-on, delegated my immediate project responsibilities to my team, and was boarding a plane. I had even called my landlord to ask him to water my houseplants, something I had never done before. The middle seat on the fully booked flight was uncomfortable, but my mind was too preoccupied with worst-case scenarios to care. I tried texting both my father and sister for updates, but received only brief, non-committal responses that didn't provide any real information, which only increased my worry. As the plane began its descent into O'Hare, memories of growing up in Chicago flooded back. The frozen winters building snow forts with neighborhood kids. The sweltering summers at the public pool. The constant navigation of my role as the peacekeeper in a family that seemed to thrive on small dramas. By the time I collected my bag and hailed a taxi to my father's suburban home, my stomach was tied in knots from both concern and unease about stepping back into family dynamics I had carefully escaped. The taxi pulled up to the familiar 2-story colonial, where my father and Susan had lived for the past 15 years. I scanned the street for emergency vehicles or any signs of the medical crisis I had been led to believe was unfolding. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary in the quiet neighborhood. No ambulances. No gathered relatives. Just my father's house looking exactly as it had during my last visit 2 years ago. Wheeling my suitcase up the front walk, I took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell, preparing myself for whatever family medical crisis awaited inside. The familiar chime of the doorbell echoed inside, followed by what sounded like children's laughter and the padding of small feet. Strange, I thought. If Stephanie was seriously ill, why would her children sound so carefree? The door swung open to reveal my father, James, dressed in khaki shorts and a golf polo, a relaxed smile on his face that immediately contradicted the panic in his voice during our phone call. "Bart, you made it. Come on in, son," he said, clapping me on the shoulder as though I had arrived for a casual weekend visit rather than a family medical emergency. I stepped into the foyer, the weight of my carry-on suddenly feeling heavier as confusion set in. "Dad, where's Stephanie? You said she might need to go to the hospital." Before my father could answer, 3 small hurricanes of energy burst into the hallway. Jackson, now 8 and much taller than I remembered, followed by 6-year-old Adam and 4-year-old Lily, all shouting variations of Uncle Bart at deafening volumes. "Kids, give your uncle some space to get in the door," my father said with an indulgent chuckle that only deepened my bewilderment. "Dad," I said, my voice lowering as the children circled me like excited puppies, "what's going on? Where's Stephanie? Is she at the hospital already?" A look passed across my father's face, something between guilt and mischief that made my stomach tighten. "Well, about that. Stephanie's actually in Cancun with Thomas." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "Cancun? But you said she was sick. That there was a medical emergency." "I may have exaggerated the situation a bit," he admitted, leading me into the living room where my stepmother, Susan, was packing a small suitcase of her own. "We knew you wouldn't come if we just asked you to watch the kids for a week." The reality crashed down on me like a bucket of ice water. There was no emergency. No sick sister. No hospital. I had canceled important meetings, delegated critical work projects, spent nearly $2,000 on a last-minute flight, and flown across the country because my father had lied to me. "You tricked me into flying home to babysit," The words came out incredulous, hollow with disbelief. Babysit is such a loaded word, my father said, waving his hand dismissively. We prefer to think of it as giving you quality time with your niece and nephews while helping out your sister. She and Thomas really needed this vacation. They haven't had time alone together since Lily was born. And you couldn't have just asked me directly. I was still struggling to process the magnitude of the deception. Susan chimed in from across the room. James, I told you Bart wouldn't appreciate the creative invitation. She looked at me apologetically while continuing to fold clothes into her suitcase. For what it's worth, I suggested he just ask you straightforwardly. You wouldn't have come, my father said with absolute certainty. When was the last time you visited? 2 years ago. And that was only because it was Christmas. Your sister needed help, and this was the only way to get you here. Jackson tugged at my jacket sleeve. Uncle Bart want to see my new video game. I'm on level 29. I looked down at his eager face, then back at my father, who was already checking his watch. Wait, where are you and Susan going? We're heading up to the lake house in Michigan for the weekend, he said casually. Just a little getaway while you're here with the kids. Susan's sister is celebrating her 50th birthday. My mind spun with the rapid recalibration required. So not only am I suddenly babysitting for my sister's vacation that I knew nothing about, but you're also leaving. You'll be fine, my father assured me, reaching for his own weekend bag. The kids are easy. Stephanie left detailed instructions on the refrigerator. There's plenty of food in the freezer. We'll be back Sunday night, and Stephanie and Thomas return next Friday. A week, I nearly choked on the word. I'm supposed to stay here for a week. Dad, I have a job. I have responsibilities. I told my boss this was an emergency. And family isn't an emergency, he countered. These are your sister's children. Your flesh and blood. Surely your tech company can survive without you for a few days. Before I could form a response that wouldn't include language inappropriate for young ears, my stepmother approached with a sympathetic smile. The guest room is all made up for you. Fresh towels in the bathroom. We really do appreciate you helping out, Bart. The kids have been so excited since we told them you were coming. I glanced at the 3 children, who were now circling me with undisguised curiosity and excitement. Lily, whom I barely knew, looked up at me with big eyes. Do you like unicorns, Uncle Bart? I have 7. How could I explain to these innocent faces that I had been manipulated into being here? That their grandfather had fabricated a medical emergency to trick me into providing free childcare? That I had important deadlines at work that were now in jeopardy because of this deception? Within the next hour, my father and Susan had provided a cursory overview of the children's routines, or lack thereof, showed me where the spare key was hidden, reminded me about Lily's allergy to strawberries, and were backing their SUV out of the driveway with cheerful waves. The entire handoff had taken less time than my average morning coffee run in Seattle. Standing in the driveway with 3 children I barely knew, watching my father drive away, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. OMG, thank you. Kids' schedules on fridge. Jackson karate moan wed 4 p.m. Adam swimming 2s 5 p.m. Lily dance Thurs 3 p.m. All emergency on fridge. WAFI password. Family First 2022. You're the best brother ever. Not a single acknowledgement of the deception or apology for the disruption to my life. Just an exclamation point-filled message that assumed my willing participation in their plan. As I herded the children back into the house, trying to process the whiplash of emotions, one thought kept circulating through my mind. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. If they wanted me to babysit so badly they had to create an elaborate lie, then they were going to get a version of childcare they never anticipated. That first night was an eye-opening experience in chaos theory. I discovered that bedtime was apparently a fluid concept in my sister's household. 8:30 came and went with no sign of the children winding down their activities. When I tentatively suggested it might be time to get ready for bed, I was met with 3 different versions of, "But Mom lets us stay up later." "What time does your mom usually have you go to bed?" I asked Jackson, hoping the oldest would provide some reliable information. He shrugged, eyes never leaving his video game. "Whenever, sometimes 10 or 11. On a school night. For an 8-year-old. That couldn't be right." I checked the detailed instructions Stephanie had left on the refrigerator, only to find a sparse list of contact numbers and activity schedules, but nothing about daily routines or rules. By 10:30, after negotiations that would have impressed seasoned diplomats, I finally had all 3 children in their respective beds, though I suspected Jackson had smuggled his handheld game console under his pillow. The house looked like it had been hit by a localized tornado. Toys scattered across every surface. Half-eaten snacks abandoned on coffee tables and countertops. Clothing items draped over furniture like decorative bunting. I spent another hour tidying the worst of it before collapsing into the guest room bed, only to be awakened at 6 a.m. by Lily standing beside me, staring with unblinking intensity. "I want pancakes," she announced when she saw I was awake. And so began my first full day of unexpected childcare. The morning revealed more about the household ecosystem. The children had no assigned chores or responsibilities. They expected to be served meals and snacks on demand, left messes without consequence, and responded to gentle requests to help clean up with genuine confusion, as if I had asked them to explain quantum physics. The kitchen told its own story. The refrigerator contained an alarming proportion of processed foods, with a conspicuous absence of fruits and vegetables. The pantry was stocked with enough sugary cereals and snacks to supply a convenience store. When I suggested eggs for breakfast, instead of the rainbow-colored cereal Jackson reached for, all 3 children looked at me as if I had proposed eating gravel. By midday, I had made several troubling discoveries. The children's screen time appeared completely unregulated. When not on tablets or gaming systems, they turned to the massive television that dominated the living room wall. Their concept of outdoor play seemed limited to occasionally looking out the window. When I suggested we go to the nearby park, they reacted with the reluctance of people being asked to trek through a desert. Attempts to contact either my sister or father went straight to voicemail. A text to Stephanie asking about household rules received a breezy, "Whatever works for you." They're pretty self-sufficient, which was demonstrably untrue. A message to my father asking why they had gone to such elaborate lengths to get me here went unanswered. It was during a rare, quiet moment, while Adam and Lily were grudgingly coloring pictures I had suggested as an alternative to their tablets, that Jackson provided the missing context. "Aunt Karen was supposed to watch us, but she got smart," he said, methodically arranging his action figures in battle formation. "Got smart," I prompted. "Yeah. Last time Grandpa called her about an emergency, she called Mom directly to check first. So she didn't come." He said this with the casual acceptance of someone describing an ordinary family dynamic, not recognizing the manipulation it revealed. "Has Grandpa done this before? Told people there was an emergency when there wasn't?" I kept my tone neutral, aware I was questioning an 8-year-old about adult behavior. Jackson nodded. "Lots of times. Usually to get babysitters." Uncle Mike stopped answering Grandpa's calls after the last time. The picture became clearer. This wasn't an isolated incident or momentary lapse in judgment. This was a pattern of manipulation my father had perfected, using false emergencies to secure childcare when more honest approaches failed. And my sister was complicit, happily benefiting from the deception without having to directly participate in it. The realization crystallized something in me. My anger wasn't just about being tricked into coming home. It was about a family dynamic that treated deception as an acceptable strategy, that prioritized convenience over honesty, that modeled manipulation as problem-solving to impressionable children. I looked around at the disorganized house, at the children who had been given neither boundaries nor responsibilities, at the evidence of parenting that took the path of least resistance. My initial impulse to book the next flight back to Seattle faded as I recognized a different kind of emergency than the one I had been told about. These kids weren't just in need of a babysitter. They were in need of structure, consistency, and someone who cared enough to establish both. The real family emergency was unfolding in slow motion, in the habits and expectations being formed in these three young minds. As Lily approached with a half-hearted scribble asking if she could return to her tablet, and Adam whined about being hungry despite having snacked continuously all day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to respond to my family's deception with anger or abandonment. I was going to respond with something much more powerful. Genuine care disguised as compliance. "Let's make a deal," I told the children, gathering them for an impromptu family meeting. "This is going to be the best week of your lives, but we're going to do things a little differently than you're used to." Their skeptical expressions told me they had heard similar promises before. They had no idea that this time, things really would be different. Not just for the week, but potentially for their futures. I reached for my phone and called my boss. "Terry, that family emergency I mentioned. It's going to require me to stay a bit longer than I thought. Is it possible to extend my leave by a few more days?" The children exchanged glances, clearly wondering what this strangely determined uncle had in mind. They were about to find out. The morning of day 2 began with Operation Transformation. While the children slept, I drove to the nearest office supply store when it opened at 7, purchasing colorful poster boards, markers, stickers, and a laminating machine. Next came a trip to the grocery store where I filled the cart with fresh produce, whole grain bread, lean proteins, and ingredients for simple, nutritious meals. By the time 3 sleepy children wandered downstairs in search of breakfast, I had created individualized chore charts posted on the refrigerator, complete with age-appropriate tasks and a sticker reward system. The kitchen counters were cleared of junk food, replaced with a fruit bowl and healthy snack options at kid height. "What's all this?" Jackson asked suspiciously, eyeing the charts with his name at the top. "This is how we earn screen time," I explained, scrambling eggs with diced bell peppers. "Each chore completed earns 30 minutes of tablet or TV time. Each new food tried earns bonus minutes." The revolt was immediate and passionate. "But Mom lets us watch whenever we want," Adam protested. "Grandpa said you were just supposed to make sure we don't die," Lily added with surprising bluntness for a 4-year-old. "I want rainbow cereal, not gross eggs," Jackson declared, crossing his arms. I remained calm, serving up plates of scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, and sliced apples. "This is breakfast today. Anyone who tries everything gets to put a sticker on their chart, which equals 30 minutes of screen time after lunch. Anyone who doesn't try everything can try again at lunch for the same reward." The standoff lasted 27 minutes by my watch. Adam was the first to cave, cautiously tasting the eggs with the suspicion of someone being fed something potentially poisonous. His surprised "these aren't terrible" broke the solidarity, and soon all 3 were eating, though Lily methodically separated the green peppers to the side of her plate. After breakfast came the first chore assignments. Jackson was tasked with clearing the table and loading the dishwasher. Adam was given a small handheld vacuum for the living room rug. Lily was shown how to sort clean laundry by color. Each task was demonstrated first, then supervised with patience. The complaints were constant at first. "This is child labor. I don't know how to do this. My arms are too tired. Mom never makes us work." I remained consistent and encouraging. "You're right that you don't know how yet, but that's what learning looks like. I'll help you until you can do it yourself. This isn't work, it's becoming capable." By lunchtime, the initial resistance had evolved into grudging participation. The first completed chores earned ceremonial placement of stickers and the promised screen time, which I noticed they enjoyed with more focused attention than the mindless scrolling of the previous day. The afternoon brought a new challenge. Adam's swimming lesson. The instruction sheet indicated the lesson was at the community center, but provided no details about where his swim gear was kept, what he typically brought, or the specific nature of the class. Adam himself seemed vague on these details, and my text to Stephanie went unanswered. After a search yielded swimming trunks but no goggles or towel, we made an emergency stop at a nearby store. The swimming instructor's raised eyebrows when we arrived suggested that prompt attendance was not a family trademark. "Adam's usually about 15 minutes late," she said quietly while the children changed. "And he often doesn't have all his gear." Her expression softened. "It's nice to see someone making sure he's prepared." The pattern repeated with Jackson's karate class the next day. The instructor pulled me aside after class. "Is Stephanie back from vacation already? Jackson usually misses when she's away." "No, I'm watching the kids this week." "Their uncle," I explained. He nodded thoughtfully. "Well, it's good to see him here. Consistency is important in martial arts. Jackson has talent, but his sporadic attendance makes progress difficult." Each interaction with the children's instructors painted a clearer picture of well-intentioned but disorganized parenting. The children weren't being neglected in any reportable sense, but they were drifting without the structures that would help them thrive. The real challenge came at bedtime. I established a clear routine. Baths or showers, teeth brushing, one story or chapter for Jackson. Lights out by 8:30 for the younger two and 9 for Jackson. The protests were epic in scale and creativity. "But I'll die if I have to go to bed this early. My brain doesn't get tired until midnight. Mom lets me fall asleep watching videos." I held firm, sitting in the hallway outside their rooms to redirect wanderers back to bed. By the third night, the protests had diminished as the children adapted to the predictability of the routine and discovered they actually felt better after a full night's sleep. The house gradually transformed alongside the children's behavior. Toys found designated homes in labeled bins. Laundry made it into hampers instead of decorating floor space. The kitchen became a place of simple cooking lessons rather than a snack dispensary. At the park, I noticed the children initially hung back, watching other kids climb and swing with uncertainty. It took gentle encouragement to get them engaged in physical play. Once started, however, they blossomed, returning home pleasantly tired instead of wired from excess sugar and screen stimulation. Perhaps the most telling moment came on day 4, when Jackson voluntarily loaded the dishwasher after dinner without being prompted. "I just thought I'd help," he said with a small shrug when I noticed. That night, after the children were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, documenting the changes. I created a simple household management system. Meal planning templates, chore rotation schedules, routines for morning and evening. I backed up photos of the organized spaces and video clips of the children, engaged in various helpful activities. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "Having the best time. Weather perfect. Thomas surprised me with sunset cruise tomorrow. Any chance you could stay few extra days? Kid's grandma on Thomas' side wants to visit, but can only come next month/2s. Would be huge help." No question about how things were going. No acknowledgement of the imposition. Just an extension request as casual as borrowing a cup of sugar. I looked around at the now orderly kitchen, thought about the children sleeping peacefully upstairs on a consistent schedule, and made my decision. My response was simple. "I can stay. We should talk when you get back." My father had tricked me into coming home to babysit. My sister had taken advantage of the situation without hesitation. But the real victims weren't the adults in this scenario. They were 3 children being raised without the boundaries and skills they would need to navigate the world successfully. This wasn't just about teaching my family a lesson anymore. It was about giving 3 kids a glimpse of what was possible when someone cared enough to establish structure and expectations. Whether that glimpse would translate into lasting change remained to be seen, but I was committed to creating the best possible demonstration in the time I had left. With the basic routines established and the house functioning more smoothly, I shifted focus to building skills that would serve the children long after I returned to Seattle. This wasn't just about surviving a week of childcare anymore. It was about planting seeds that might continue growing in my absence. First came cooking lessons, tailored to each child's age and abilities. Lily learned to make simple snack plates with cut vegetables and dip. Adam mastered the perfect sandwich, learning knife skills appropriate for a 6-year-old. Jackson progressed to scrambled eggs and pasta with jarred sauce, beaming with pride when he served his first complete breakfast to his siblings. "You're a natural," I told him as he carefully divided the eggs into 3 portions. "How does it feel to make food for people you care about?" "Good," he admitted, a smile spreading across his face. "Like I'm grown up, but not in a boring way." I documented these milestones, capturing photos of their proud faces beside their culinary creations. Each new skill mastered went into a digital album labeled Kids' Achievements on my phone. For the weekend, I planned a special project. After obtaining permission from my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to clean up her overgrown garden in exchange for using her vegetables, I gathered gardening supplies and led the children next door. "Today we're learning about community service," I explained as we tackled the weeds that had overwhelmed her tomato plants. "What's community service?" Adam asked, struggling with his 2 large gardening gloves. "It's when you help people just because it's the right thing to do, not because you get something in return," I explained. Lily frowned. "But you said Mrs. Patterson would give us tomatoes." "That's just a bonus," Jackson chimed in unexpectedly. "The real reason is because she's old and needs help, right, Uncle Bart?" I nodded, surprised and pleased by his insight. "Exactly. And how does it feel to be helpers instead of just kids who need help?" Their thoughtful expressions told me the concept was taking root. By the end of the afternoon, Mrs. Patterson's garden was transformed, and she insisted the children each pick a ripe tomato as thanks. Their sun-kissed faces showed a different kind of satisfaction than I had seen from any amount of screen time. That evening, I helped them create a kindness calendar for the upcoming week, with simple daily acts they could perform. Monday, write thank you notes to Mrs. Patterson. Tuesday, pick up litter at the park. Wednesday, make a card for their karate and swim instructors. When I suggested a video call with their parents to share their accomplishments, the children eagerly arranged their various projects for display. Stephanie answered from a beachfront restaurant, the sounds of vacation merriment in the background. "Hey guys, are you having fun with Uncle Bart?" she asked, her attention divided between the camera and something happening off-screen. The children clamored to show their projects, speaking over each other in excitement. "I made breakfast, we cleaned a garden, I can fold towels in triangles." Stephanie's response was pleasant but distracted. "That's nice, sweetie. Looks like you're having a great time. Mommy's got to go for dinner now. Be good for Uncle Bart." The call ended before the children could share half of what they had prepared. I watched their faces fall as the screen went black. "She didn't even look at my tomato," Lily said quietly. "Or hear about my perfect eggs," Jackson added, disappointment evident in his slumped shoulders. I knelt down to their level. Sometimes adults get really busy and distracted, especially on vacation. That doesn't mean what you accomplished isn't amazing. I saw it. You saw it. And you know what? I think we should celebrate your achievements ourselves. That night we had an impromptu skills showcase dinner, where each child demonstrated something new they had learned. We ended the evening with homemade ice cream sundaes, celebrating their growth rather than dwelling on their parents' inattention. As the children went to bed, I noticed a shift in their interactions with me. The initial wariness had given way to a tentative trust. They were beginning to believe that rules and expectations weren't punishments, but expressions of care. The following days brought more structured activities. We created a family museum in the living room, with each child curating a display of their treasured items with handwritten descriptions. We established reading hour before dinner, where everyone, including me, read books of their choosing in comfortable silence. On Wednesday morning, I noticed Jackson helping Lily tie her shoes without being asked. "She keeps tripping on the laces," he explained with a shrug when he caught me watching. and I already know how to tie really good knots. That's what being a good brother looks like, I told him. Being strong doesn't just mean being tough. It means using your strength to help others. He considered this with surprising seriousness for an 8-year-old. Dad always says I need to toughen up and stop being a baby. There are different kinds of strength, I replied carefully. Kindness is actually one of the strongest things there is, because it's a choice you make even when it's difficult. These conversations happened organically throughout our days together, small moments of connection that seemed to impact the children more deeply than any structured lesson. By Thursday, the children were following the routine we had established with minimal prompting. Morning responsibilities, balanced meals, outdoor activities, creative time, reading hour, dinner prep participation, evening chores, and consistent bedtime had become our rhythm. I documented everything meticulously. Before and after photos of spaces, video clips of new skills being demonstrated, the completed chore charts with their proud rows of stickers. I organized it all into a presentation titled A Week of Growth, complete with suggestions for maintaining the systems we had established. That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Uncle Bart, do you have to go back to Seattle?" The simple query carried weight beyond its words. "I do have to go back eventually. My home and job are there." Her small face crumpled slightly. "But who will help us do the good things when you're gone?" The question lingered with me long after she had fallen asleep. These children had adapted to structure and thrived with consistent expectations. Would all our progress dissipate once I left and old patterns resumed? I stayed up late that night, refining the family systems I had created, making them as simple and sustainable as possible. I wrote a letter to my sister and brother-in-law, carefully worded to be constructive rather than accusatory, detailing the positive changes I had observed and strategies for maintaining them. As I worked, I realized something important. The lesson I was teaching wasn't just for the children, or even primarily for them. It was for the adults who had created this situation through deception and poor planning. The transformation of both the physical space and the children's behavior would speak volumes about what was possible with consistent, caring effort. My father had tricked me into providing childcare. My sister had extended her vacation without consultation. But in complying with their scheme while completely changing its execution, I was demonstrating a more powerful response than anger or confrontation could achieve. I was showing them what they had been missing by taking shortcuts in parenting and family relationships. And I was giving these children a template for what was possible, even if the adults in their lives weren't ready to embrace it yet. With that realization, I put the finishing touches on my presentation and went to bed, ready for whatever the final days of my unexpected caregiving role might bring. As we entered the second weekend of my stay, the transformation in both the house and the children had become remarkable. Surfaces that had been perpetually cluttered now stayed mostly clear. Toys were returned to their designated homes without constant reminders. Meals had become collaborative affairs rather than service on demand. But the most significant changes were in the children themselves. Jackson, who had initially presented as entitled and screen-obsessed, had discovered a natural talent for organization and responsibility. I often found him preemptively handling tasks or quietly helping his younger siblings. "Uncle Bart, I made a better system for the Legos," he told me on Saturday morning, proudly showing me how he had sorted the building blocks by color and size in labeled containers. This way Lily can find the pieces she needs without dumping everything. Adam, the middle child who had initially been the most resistant to structure, had blossomed with clear expectations. His energy, previously chaotic and disruptive, had channeled into enthusiastic participation in physical activities. The child who had complained about a 3-block walk to the park now asked daily when we could go back to try the monkey bars again. "Watch this, Uncle Bart," he called from across the playground, successfully navigating the entire stretch of bars for the first time. The look of accomplishment on his face was worth every moment of the earlier struggles. Lily at 4 had transformed from clingy and demanding to surprisingly independent for her age. She now dressed herself each morning, proudly announced when she had used the bathroom without help, and had developed an unexpected interest in plant care, diligently watering the houseplants each day with a small watering can. "The plants are my responsibility," she informed a surprised Mrs. Patterson when we visited again to deliver fresh baked cookies as a thank you for letting us work in her garden. "They need water like we need hugs. Not too much and not too little." These moments of growth accumulated daily, each one documented in my ever-expanding digital record. I had begun the documentation as evidence for my family, but it had evolved into a celebration of the children's capabilities. Sunday brought our most ambitious project yet. After breakfast, I gathered the children in the kitchen with an exciting announcement. "Today, we're going to prepare a special Sunday dinner entirely by ourselves," I explained. "Each of you will be in charge of one part of the meal, and I'll be your assistant instead of the other way around." Their eyes widened at the role reversal. We spent the morning planning the menu, making a shopping list, and visiting the grocery store where each child got to push a small cart and find their ingredients. Back home, the kitchen became a busy workshop. Jackson, taking his role as head chef seriously, prepared chicken with a simple herb rub, carefully following the pictorial recipe I had created. Adam, wearing oversized oven mitts, washed and seasoned potatoes for roasting. Lily tore lettuce leaves and arranged cucumber slices in a pattern for the salad. There were minor disasters: an egg broken on the floor, a too enthusiastic application of pepper, a near miss with a hot pan, but each was treated as a learning opportunity rather than a failure. "Mistakes are just how we figure out the right way to do things," I reminded them as we cleaned up spilled milk together. "The only real mistake is giving up or not trying at all." The finished meal wasn't perfect by adult standards, but it was entirely theirs, created with minimal assistance from me. The pride on their faces as they served dinner at a properly set table was unmistakable. I captured a photo of all three standing beside their culinary creation, beaming with accomplishment. That evening, after the children were asleep, I received a text from my father announcing that he and Susan would be returning the following afternoon. Stephanie and Thomas had extended their vacation again and would now be back on Wednesday rather than Monday as planned. I used the advance notice to prepare. The next morning, after the children left for school, on time, with completed homework and proper supplies, a routine we had established the previous week, I put the finishing touches on the house organization and completed my presentation. When my father and Susan walked through the door at 3 p.m., their expressions of shock made all the effort worthwhile. "What happened here?" my father asked, looking around at the immaculate living room where toys were neatly organized in labeled bins and surfaces gleamed with recent cleaning. "We established some systems," I said simply. "The kids have really taken to them." Susan ran her hand over the kitchen counter, visibly impressed by the absence of clutter and grime. "This is remarkable." And the children went along with this. "Children thrive on structure and clear expectations," I explained. "They've been amazing once they understood the benefits of organization and responsibility." My father looked skeptical. "That doesn't sound like the grandkids I know. Especially Jackson. That boy would live on his video games if allowed." "People rise to the expectations we set," I said. "I've limited screen time to earned rewards, and he's discovered other interests. He's actually very organized when given the chance to develop that skill." The conversation paused as the children returned from school, bursting through the door with their usual energy, but channeling it into their new arrival routine. Backpacks in designated hooks, shoes on the rack, hands washed, and healthy snacks selected from prepared options in the refrigerator. "Grandpa, Grandma Susan, watch what I can do," Lily exclaimed, demonstrating how she could pour her own small glass of milk from a lightweight pitcher prepared for her use. My father watched in astonishment as the children moved through their after-school routine with minimal prompting, each one checking their responsibility chart before settling in for their earned screen time. "These can't be the same kids," he muttered. "What kind of sorcery is this?" "Not sorcery," I corrected. just consistency and positive reinforcement. Children want to feel capable and valued. These systems give them both. That evening, I presented my documentation to my father and stepmother, showing them the before and after photos, the videos of the children mastering new skills, and the simple systems I had created to maintain the progress. This is how the chore rotation works, I explained, displaying a colorful chart. And here's the meal planning template that makes grocery shopping more efficient. The children each get to choose one dinner per week, which increases their investment in the process. Susan, at least, seemed genuinely impressed. This is incredibly thorough, Bart. I had no idea you had such a talent for organization and childcare. My father was quieter, his expression difficult to read. Stephanie might not appreciate you completely overhauling her parenting approach, he finally said. I haven't overhauled anything, I replied evenly. I've simply provided structure and consistency that benefits the children. The systems can be adjusted to fit their parenting style, but the basic principles of routine and appropriate responsibility are universal. He shifted uncomfortably. About getting you here, he began. The fake emergency, I supplied. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. It may have been an exaggeration, but we really did need help with the kids. Then you could have asked directly, I pointed out. Deception wasn't necessary. Would you have come if I had just asked you to babysit for a week? He challenged. I considered the question honestly. Perhaps not for a week, but I might have come for a weekend. The point is, I should have had the choice based on honest information. The end justifies the means, he said with a shrug. The kids had a great time with you, and you clearly enjoyed playing house dad for a week. His dismissive characterization stung, but I refused to be baited into an argument. This wasn't playing house, Dad. This was showing basic respect for the children by giving them the structure and skills they need. And no, the end doesn't justify means that involve lying to family members. The conversation might have escalated, but it was interrupted by Jackson calling us to dinner. The children had prepared a simple meal with minimal supervision, eager to show their grandparents their new skills. As we sat at the properly set table, listening to the children enthusiastically explain how they had made each dish, I caught Susan watching my father with an expression that suggested a private conversation would be happening later. The true test would come when Stephanie and Thomas returned, but for now, I was content knowing I had done everything possible to create sustainable systems for these children. Whether the adults in their lives chose to maintain those systems remained to be seen. Wednesday arrived with a flurry of activity. The children, knowing their parents were returning that afternoon, had spontaneously decided to prepare a welcome home celebration. They spent the morning making handmade cards, arranging fresh flowers from Mrs. Patterson's garden in a vase, and helping me prepare a special dinner of their parents' favorite foods. Do you think Mom and Dad will like our surprise? Adam asked as he carefully colored a banner reading, Welcome Home in wobbly letters. I think they'll be amazed by how much you've all learned, I assured him, helping Lily string paper decorations across the dining room. Jackson was uncharacteristically quiet as he set the table with careful precision. When I asked what he was thinking, he looked up with serious eyes. Will things go back to how they were before when you leave? The question cut to the heart of my own concerns. That depends on your parents, but also on you kids. You've learned so many great skills and habits. You can keep using them even if the adults don't remind you. He nodded thoughtfully, straightening the silverware with extra care. I like things better this way. The house doesn't feel crazy all the time. Then tell your parents that, I suggested. They might not realize how important routine and organization are to you. By mid-afternoon, the house was spotless, dinner was prepared, and the children were positioned by the front window, watching for their parents' car with barely contained excitement. When the taxi finally pulled into the driveway, they erupted in cheers. Stephanie and Thomas, tanned and relaxed from their extended vacation, looked momentarily confused by the enthusiastic greeting committee that burst through the front door to meet them. What's all this? Stephanie laughed as Lily thrust a handmade card into her hands, and Adam tugged at their luggage, insisting on helping carry it inside. "We made you a special welcome home," Lily announced proudly. "And dinner is ready whenever you are," Jackson added with newfound confidence. "We helped make everything." Thomas raised his eyebrows at me over the children's heads. "Sounds like you've been busy," he commented as we followed the excited children into the house. Stephanie stopped in the entryway, looking around with visible surprise. "The house looks different." "Clean," Thomas supplied, glancing into the living room where toys were neatly organized and surfaces were clear of clutter. "We've been practicing responsibility," Adam declared importantly, demonstrating how he hung his jacket on his designated hook. "Uncle Bart taught us how to take care of our things and help around the house," Jackson explained, a note of pride in his voice. Stephanie shot me a look that mingled confusion with something that might have been defensiveness. "That sounds very structured." "Structure helps children thrive," I said mildly. "They've really embraced it." The children led their parents on a tour of the transformed house, eagerly pointing out their contribution to each organized space. Lily showed off her perfectly made bed, complete with stuffed animals arranged in size order. Adam demonstrated the toy classification system with the enthusiasm of a museum curator. Jackson proudly displayed the meal planning calendar and chore rotation chart hanging on the refrigerator. Thomas seemed genuinely impressed. "This is incredible. I don't think I've seen the actual color of this carpet since we moved in." Stephanie's reaction was more reserved. "It's very organized. Almost like a different house." "It's the same house, just with some systems in place," I explained. "The kids have really responded well to having clear expectations and responsibilities." Dinner provided the most dramatic evidence of the children's transformation. They served the meal they had helped prepare, explained each dish with pride, and maintained actual conversation instead of the chaos I gathered was the norm at family meals. "Jackson, did you actually make this salad?" Thomas asked, clearly surprised by his son's newfound culinary skills. "Yep. I'm in charge of knife skills now because I'm the oldest," he explained seriously. "I can cut vegetables safely and teach Adam when he's older." "And I set the table all by myself," Lily added, not to be outdone. "Uncle Bart says I'm very responsible." "Responsible," Jackson corrected gently. Stephanie watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. When the children excused themselves properly and began clearing dishes without being asked, she finally turned to me. "What exactly have you been doing with my children for the past week and a half?" she asked, her tone hovering between curiosity and accusation. "Creating structure and teaching basic life skills," I replied. "They're incredibly capable when given clear expectations and positive reinforcement." Thomas nodded approvingly. "I've been saying we need more structure around here." "This is amazing." "It's certainly different," Stephanie said carefully. "But our family has our own way of doing things. I'm not sure all this rigid organization suits our lifestyle." I maintained a neutral expression. "There's nothing rigid about teaching children to clean up after themselves and contribute to household functioning. These are basic life skills." "It feels like you're criticizing my parenting," she said, her voice dropping to avoid being overheard by the children who were loading the dishwasher in the kitchen. "I'm not criticizing," I clarified. "I'm showing what's possible when consistent expectations are established." The children have thrived with this approach. "They seemed perfectly happy before," she countered defensively. Thomas cleared his throat uncomfortably. "To be fair, honey, I've never seen them this helpful or confident. Whatever Bart did seems to be working." The conversation paused as the children returned, eager to show their parents one more surprise. A digital slideshow I had helped them create documenting their journey of growth over the past 10 days. The presentation, narrated enthusiastically by all three children taking turns, showed before and after pictures of spaces in the house, video clips of newly mastered skills, and photos of completed projects. Their pride in their accomplishments was palpable. When the slideshow concluded with a family photo we had taken at the park, showing all three children with beaming, confident smiles, there was a moment of silence. "We did all that?" Adam asked wonderingly, as though seeing their collective achievements for the first time. "You absolutely did," I confirmed. "With some guidance, but the work and the growth was all yours." After the children went to bed, following their now-established routine with minimal resistance, I sat down with Stephanie and Thomas for an adult conversation. "I want to be clear about something," I began. "I came here under false pretenses. Dad told me you needed to go to the hospital for a serious procedure. I dropped everything, including important work projects, because I was told it was an emergency." Stephanie had the grace to look embarrassed. "Dad can be a bit dramatic when he wants something." "It wasn't drama, it was a deliberate lie," I corrected. "And you took advantage of it without hesitation or apology." "We really did need the childcare," she said defensively. "And you've always been so busy with your important Seattle life. What were we supposed to do?" "Ask honestly," I suggested. "Respect me enough to give me accurate information and let me make my own decision." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. For what it's worth, I told her the emergency story was going too far. But I was overruled. I took a deep breath, centering myself. "Look, what's done is done. But I want to talk about what happens next. These kids have made incredible progress with consistent expectations and appropriate responsibilities. It would be a shame to lose that momentum." "Are you suggesting we're bad parents?" Stephanie asked, tension evident in her voice. "I'm suggesting that the systems I've put in place have helped the children flourish," I said carefully. "And that maintaining some version of them would benefit everyone, especially the kids." I showed them the binder I had prepared, with the daily routines, chore rotations, meal planning templates, and behavior reinforcement strategies all clearly documented. "This isn't about criticism," I explained. "It's about seeing what's possible when children are given both boundaries and responsibilities. They're happier, more confident, and more capable than they were 2 weeks ago." Thomas leafed through the binder with interest. "This is incredibly thorough. And honestly, the difference in the kids is remarkable." Stephanie remained resistant. "Our parenting style may be different from your perfect systems, but our children were fine before you showed up." "Were they, though?" I asked gently. Jackson's karate instructor mentioned he frequently misses classes. Adam's swim coach seemed surprised he showed up prepared. Both mentioned consistency issues. The children themselves told me they often feel overwhelmed by the lack of structure. Her expression faltered slightly. "They said that?" "Not in those exact words," I acknowledged. "But they've repeatedly expressed how much they appreciate knowing what to expect each day. Structure isn't restrictive for children. It's reassuring." The conversation continued late into the evening, moving from initial defensiveness toward cautious consideration. By the time we concluded, Stephanie and Thomas had agreed to maintain at least the core elements of the systems I had established, with modifications to fit their parenting style. "I'm not saying we'll run our home like a military academy," Stephanie clarified. "But I can see the benefits of more consistent routines and expectations." "That's all I'm asking," I said. "Just consider what's been working and why." The next morning brought my departure. The children were subdued as they helped me pack, each one finding small ways to prolong the process. "You'll video call us, right?" Jackson confirmed for the third time. "Every Sunday at 4 p.m., just like we agreed," I promised. "And you're all coming to visit me in Seattle this summer." "Can we cook in your apartment?" Adam asked eagerly. "Absolutely. We'll make a whole feast together." Lily clung to my leg as I prepared to leave. "I don't want you to go, Uncle Bart." I knelt down to her level. "I have to go back to my home and job, but that doesn't mean we won't stay connected. And everything you learned while I was here. That stays with you even when I'm gone." The goodbye at the door was emotional but affirming. Each child had a specific responsibility in our farewell ritual. Jackson helped carry my bag to the taxi. Adam was in charge of my farewell card signed by all three, and Lily provided the goodbye hug inspector, ensuring everyone received proper embraces. Stephanie and Thomas watched this coordinated effort with newfound appreciation. "I think we've underestimated them," Thomas said quietly. "Many adults do," I replied. "Children rise or fall to the level of our expectations." As the taxi pulled away, three small figures waved from the driveway, standing tall with new confidence. My father's deception had brought me here against my will, but what had begun as an unwanted obligation had transformed into something unexpectedly meaningful. I had come to babysit. I was leaving having reminded myself of what truly matters. Not just the professional achievements I had been so focused on in Seattle, but the human connections that give those achievements purpose. The lesson I had intended for my family had become a lesson for me as well. 3 months later, when the children arrived for their promised summer visit, I saw the evidence that at least some of our systems had endured. They stepped off the plane with neatly packed bags they insisted on carrying themselves, confidently followed the schedule we had created together, and took pride in helping prepare meals in my apartment kitchen. On our video calls, Jackson would proudly report on his increasing responsibility as home manager assistant, a title Stephanie had created to acknowledge his organizational skills. The chore chart remained on the refrigerator, though modified to fit the family's rhythm. Not everything had persisted exactly as I had established it, but the core principles of respect, capability, and appropriate responsibility had taken root. My father had tricked me into flying home just to babysit, but in the end, the experience had given all of us something more valuable than we expected. A new understanding of our capabilities, our relationships, and the power of responding to manipulation with genuine care rather than reactive anger. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone's deception unexpectedly led to something positive? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found my approach satisfying, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with anyone who might need a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply showing people a better way. Thanks for listening, and remember that boundaries and expectations aren't just important for children, they're essential for healthy relationships at any age.